Hi, I'm Katie, and this is the Free Art and Design School podcast, web series, whatever. I have an artist who I really admire and look up to here today as my guest. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Erick Martinez. I'm an illustrator, screen printer, and just maker. So yeah,
Make the most amazing work. It's so
thank
colorful,
you.
it's so fun. It's like half of it really brings out, I feel like, the inner child of whoever is interacting with it. I was
hmm
wondering if you could talk about some of your inspirations and how you started making the work that you make.
Well, I feel like it's a little different with with printing and with like the wood stuff. So like the wood stuff I think is inspired by like toys. I mean, I'm such a like toy collector, and you can't see any here, but above me there's like a shit ton of toys. To the left of me, there's a shit ton of toys. So like I always gravitated towards like old school, like 50s toys. And yeah, that really like I think when I started working with wood, I first just started painting on like pieces of wood, like if it was a canvas. And then eventually I was like, whoa, what if I cut into it? And I started cutting into them a little bit. And then I was like, wait, what if I made like a little figure? And then once I made the little devil guy that I make a lot, and everyone was like, that's awesome, I love it. And that's when it really like clicked for me. And I was like, oh, cool, I could be making like toys kind of, like, and like the same kind of nerds that like collecting and like figures like me are the people that like gravitated towards that. So like I feel like I started making them because I love that, and then the people that also love that found my work, you know?
Yeah. And your work
hmm
is just it's amazing. I wish I
Thank you.
had like an ounce of your creativity because you have such beautiful color palettes and energy and
Thank
like
you.
a real sweetness to the characters that you create.
hmm
Like you said 50s inspiration for your toys. Like is that also sort of for the printmaking or is that do you have a lot of
Yeah, I think for
inspiration?
my style in general, it's like 1950s, like old cereal box cartoons, like old packaging and old illustration, like from the 50s, is what really like, like gets me is like when I see an old design or old illustration, I'm just like, yes, that's so good.
Did you
So
watch
that
did you
mhm.
watch any of the UPA cartoons?
Yes.
Okay, because that
Yeah.
also feels like it resonated a lot for me.
Yeah, I love that style. I mean, just that style in general. And then like Hanna-Barbera like kind of try to copy that a bit. So all that like really just makes me so happy, you
Yeah,
know?
it's
hmm
it's so cool seeing your stuff. What was sort of your trajectory becoming an artist? Because where you are now is like amazing, and I feel like so many people like where you are is like an inspiration to so many people as like a kind of like goal or like impossible dream.
hmm
That's how I feel about your work, at least.
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, I've always just drawn. I've been that like I was always that kid that was drawing in class. Like I was never good at school. I was never good at like really any subject. But I was always not paying attention and drawing. So when I was young, I always like knew I wanted to be an artist. But then I got to middle school and I was like, wait, that's not a thing anymore. People aren't, because in my mind, I'm like, an artist is like has the canvas and the palette and they're like making this beautiful painting. And I'm like, wait, do people still do that? I don't think that's a job anymore. So then in middle school, I like kind of like didn't draw for like a few years. Also, you get older and you're kind of like, that's not cool anymore,
Yeah.
like so I stopped drawing for a bit, which I regret, but oh well. And then I got to high school and I got into like more tagging and stuff.
hmm
So that kind of got me back into drawing, and I would take the like USPS labels, and I wouldn't like tag a name, I would just draw characters. And I
Mm,
would put them up all around like my school, or like I grew up in Santa Monica, so all around
oh,
Santa
cool.
Monica. And that got me back into drawing. And then I got into AP art like my last year of high school,
Wow.
and my teacher was like, well, what do you guys like? She asked the classroom, like, what do you guys want to do for school? Like, who's going to college and what are you guys doing? And I was like, I think I'm gonna go for graphic design, because I'm like, I think that's like the only art job you can get now. I was like, I was so like not aware of art jobs. And then I remember I said graphic design, and she like made this face, and I was like, oh no, does she not think I'm like good enough to be like
Oh
an
no.
artist? and then but she was no, but then she like talked to me after. She's like, have you heard of illustration? Do you know what illustration is? And I was like, no, what's illustration? And then she pulled out this book, you know, those like yearly books they put out were like the best
Oh
illustration
yeah,
of
yeah,
the
yeah.
year. Yeah, so she brought out one of those and she showed me, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is like what I look at on the internet. I didn't know it had a name. So
Wow.
so then once I went to college, I had already applied as graphic design. So as soon as I had my first meeting with my counselor, I was like, no, not graphic design, illustration. Put me in the illustration program. So yeah, like I really owe a lot to her that she like got me on the right track like right before school, right before I went to college. So Miss Baus from Santa Monica High School, you're awesome. She like really like helped me out by like telling me what illustration was, you know, and she didn't like push me like this is what you should do. She's like, have you heard of this? Maybe you might like this. So yeah, and then from there I learned how to screen print in school, and that like I fell in love with screen printing.
Oh,
It's yeah, I love screen printing. It's so fun.
I
But I
was
also kind of hate it at times, you know.
it's the worst in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's like the coolest medium because you can do anything with it, but it's
Hmm.
like so finicky.
Yeah.
I was gonna say your work actually has a lot of graphic design elements to it, and I guess that's partially because the 50s style of illustration
Yeah.
is heavily graphic. But that's amazing that you were able to sort of like carve your path. Because obviously, like, I don't know, even now illustration feels at risk from AI and the world just being
Yeah.
terrible. So it's awesome to see that you're doing what you're doing and doing it so passionately and have so much communal support. Does being like an fellow LA born and raised resident, do you think that affects your work at all?
Yeah, I think the like I don't know, the California sunshine kind of like life, you know, like seeps into my work in some way, you know,
Yeah.
like um at least I think so, you know, I don't know. I've never lived anywhere else. So like
Wow. That's
yeah, I've
crazy.
only lived in LA, so that's all I know. So yeah, I'm sure it's influenced it, but I'm not really sure how, but yeah, I definitely know I can't work without sunshine. Once we get into like the cloudier weather, like my work ethic kind of goes down. I start like I don't produce as much. So summertime is when I'm like
Mm.
really like hitting it hard, and then wintertime I'm just like I'm cold.
Well, that explains a lot too about your color palettes. Like
Yeah.
every character, whether it's like even the ghost that you just showed earlier before we were on camera. Um yes, like even that, which is like a dark blue, like black and white palette, feels so vibrant and so energetic.
Mhm.
Um and I'm sort of wondering like how you keep your energy up because I feel like you're always making things, like you're posting something every day that you're working on.
Well, also it's because I do this full time now. I've been doing it for almost 2 years,
Wow,
and
congrats.
it can be hard, you know. So like I have to stay working, you know.
Yeah.
There's no like I can't like have a lull period because it's just otherwise I'm not paying rent, you know?
Yeah.
So like I also think sometimes maybe Instagram can make it seem like he's killing it, but I'm like, there's some months where I'm like, damn, I should have worked harder, you
No.
know? So
It
like,
does look like
but
you're killing it though. Like, I don't know, fake it till you
that's
make it.
good.
But like, I
Yeah,
don't know, you're a huge inspiration.
thank you. But yeah, like I mean, I'm always just trying to like come up with new things to make. I mean, I love what I do, but it can get hard at times. You know, like I don't want to like um make it seem like going full time is like the best fucking thing, you know, because it is, but it's also it's tough, you know,
Yeah.
like it's more work than having a day job, you know, like
Mhm.
with a day job, like I feel like I could not care some days, you know, like you know, like I can kind of slack off and like I'm gonna get paid anyways, you know.
Yeah.
But like here, like I gotta give it 100%, otherwise, you know, like if stuff doesn't sell, then I got to figure out what else is going to sell, you
Yeah.
know? But but yeah, I have fun. Like I like having my home studio, and I'm working from home. I got the pets. I got a little backyard to like work and sometimes like garden, and like that helps me like stay sane, you know? And but it can be isolating
Yeah.
living, yeah, like working from home. So it's important to have like art friends or like an art community to like go hang out at.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
awesome. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your screen printing process. I think a lot of people don't know what screen printing is anymore,
Hmm.
or don't have a
Yeah.
conception that like you're the one physically making every single piece. So if you could talk about how you got into it or fell in love with it and what it's like for you now.
Okay. Yeah, so I took I took my illustration class in college, and they that's the first place I like screen printed. And it was so nice having the art studio, the school
Yeah.
studio, like where they have everything and it's all perfect. But then eventually I graduated and I lost access to that studio. And I had friends that would be like, well, I guess we can't screen print now. And I was like, no, like fuck that. Like I want to screen print. Like I love screen printing. So I like went on YouTube and like did a bunch of research of like how, the main part was like how to expose a screen. And I found this video where some guy uh just used the sun. Like he
Yeah.
just would take it outside and he would use the sun. And then I did that, and I've been doing that for like years now. And I still don't have like an exposure unit or
Oh
anything.
my God.
So I just use the sun, and I'm lucky I live in California, so like
Yeah.
pretty sunny here most of the year. So yeah, like I have a little storage space outside where like I keep all my screens when they're like coated and stuff. And then around like 12 is usually the best time to like go expose the screen. I run it into my shower, wash it out, and then I run back out to the backyard, wash it out some more with the hose. And that's kind of how I've been working. But yeah, a lot of people don't know that like they'll like look, like someone came by my table the other day when I was tabling, and they're like, wait, you made this, but like how'd you make it? I have to explain like the
The
printing
process.
process. And then they're like, but like how? And I'm like, I'm like, if you didn't understand that, then you're just not gonna get it. But I made it, like I made it. And or they're always like, but you like all, but then it's like, who drew it? I'm like, I drew it. And then they're like, wait, you do everything? I'm like, yeah. That's why, like, and then that also I have to explain that. I'm like, that's why they're like a bit more expensive than most
Yeah.
prints, because I did it all. But that's why I appreciate like the LA Printers Fair, or like, that's where I met you.
Yeah.
And like those places, they just get it. You don't have to explain. They're just like, awesome, I love the work, I'll take it.
Yeah. There was someone I was talking to who's a screen printer was like, screen printer is the least respected of the arts amongst printers because it's so like not precise compared to other forms of printing. But then
Yeah.
it's also so revered because it's like you literally have to do everything by hand and you have to be so cautious and register everything, and there's no machine helping you. There's like it's so in that way it's like so much like painting. It's like so directly physical. Um
Yeah.
and I think that's I had no idea you were doing everything like from home. Like your stuff is so precise that it's like
Thank you.
insane to think about you doing everything just sort of like you said, like ad-libbed. Wow. Do you when you're making a print, like what are the kind of things that inspire you? Because it seems like you have like a lot of like monster movie like stuff and
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
maybe cartoons or comics. Like how do you come up with a new thing? Because it feels like everything you make really connects well with the audience and is really joyful.
Well, I think I just make stuff I like. Like
Mhm.
I don't try to make stuff that I think will sell, which also, I mean, part of it does have to be that because it's like I'm trying to survive off of it. But for the most part, I'll do stuff that I like. And for me, like right now, Halloween, I love Halloween and monster movies and stuff like that. So that's always my best like time of the year, because I love making Halloween stuff, and then all the fellow Halloween nerds are like, yes,
Yes.
we want that. So but yeah, I try to make stuff, a lot of it's inspired by like, yeah, like old movies, old monster movies, music. Like music is so important to me.
Mm.
And I'm not like an idea person. I don't create from ideas. I think there's a lot of people that are like, oh, this came to me and now I have to draw it. For me, it's like I just draw, And then sometimes I'm like, oh, that looks cool. That would look good on a shirt, or that would look good on a
Uh,
print, or that would make a good wood piece, but I'm not really an idea person. Like that's why I feel like my work doesn't really say anything. There's no message usually. It's just like a creature or a thing. There's no like ideas really behind my work. And I think that used to bug me a lot where I'm like, man, there's some people saying some important shit with their work, like they're saying some important stuff that like resonates with people. But and I think it would bug me for a bit where I used to be like, my work doesn't say anything. Like, should I be saying something? But then I'm like, I don't think that's what my work does. I don't think that's what I'm here for. Maybe down the line I will have something more to say, but I think mine is more serves as like a toy or a knickknack, like, a thing that just like you put in your home and it will make you smile, and that's really all I want, As long as it makes someone like happy for like a few seconds while they walk by it, then that's cool to me, you
yeah.
know?
I
But
It's really
yeah.
inspirational because like I also like a lot of my work is just like drawings, like nudes
Hmm.
or whatever, like, illustrations or doodles or food or coffee. And I think there is a huge pressure, especially with social media, to have a political message to your artwork.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you're not a real artist. And I've definitely been like squashed by that feeling before. So it's really exciting to hear you just say like I make work to make people smile and to make something
Yeah.
beautiful and fun, and that's all it needs to be. Um, and that's really cool that you got to that place where you're like confident in your work and you're just like, I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna make what feels true to me. Um,
It's
that's really
also hard to because I'm working from home, like um I feel like if I get lost in the darkness of the world, like it's just gonna be hard to even make work. Like when I'm not feeling happy, like it's not easy to make work for me.
fun.
So I think I need to make stuff that is happy and light and like, joyful to feel good. Otherwise, if I'm making work about the darkness of the world, like I don't think I could survive. I don't think I could be making work. So what I do works for me, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah,
Yeah,
it works for me.
absolutely. And I think we need that too. I mean, it's important
Hmm.
to have read the news and have political awareness, but it's overwhelming. And
Hmm.
if we don't have work like yours, that's like beautiful and exciting and kind of like a mental break from how horrible life can be. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
reminder of how nice life can be. Um,
Hmm.
I was gonna ask you. I was gonna ask about like how you became a wood carver because that's such a different. I feel like you're so good with your hands in so many different like medium mediums, whatever. And like I'm wondering what inspired you to start carving because I feel like that's really different from printing.
Hmm. Well, like I said, I started just painting on wood, and then eventually it became like little characters. But people like Alexander Gerard, he has like a like line of wood figures that he made, and those were always really inspirational to me. What's her name? Margaret Kilgallen.
Mhm.
She uh would paint on like found like cardboard or like just wood, like random wood pieces, and like she would create like signs and cool little pieces with like just used wood.
Mm.
And that always like stuck with me. I always just thought that looked so cool. And I think that's initially why I started grabbing wood, because I started just working with like leftover wood that I would find. And I still work like that sometimes. Friends will
Wow.
be like, "Hey, like I have a bunch of wood. Do you want it?" And I'm like, "Sure." And then I'll find ways to use it. And also I watched in college, I watched a documentary on Wayne White. Do you
Hmm.
know Wayne White? He
No.
worked on Pee-wee's Playhouse, so he did a lot of the puppets for
Oh,
that, and he's done like a lot of cool work. That the documentary is called, I forgot what it's called, but
I'll
but
find
it's
it.
really good. And I watched it, and once I was done watching it, I was like, whoa, like this guy is awesome. And he's like very he works with his hands a lot. He makes puppets, he makes sculptures, but they're all like very fun and wacky and very like Pee-wee's Playhouse kind of characters. So that really inspired me. And I think a little bit of all that kind of like pushed me to like just have fun,
Yeah.
like don't like not think about the message too much. I think like people do get lost in the like, I gotta say something. And for me, it's like I just want to make stuff. Like I often think like I'd probably even be happy just making like if I was like a good woodworker, like maybe like just making furniture. Like
Mhm.
I think for me, I'm like a maker. I think I'm like for me, I'm happy working with my hands. So that's why I like screen printing too, because it's a process.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'd be happy just as long as I'm like working with my hands, or even like if I worked at a prop house or something. I think anything where I'm like not just sitting and I can be moving and like making stuff, I'm happy.
I think that's
Hmm.
really interesting because I think historically in art there's a divide between like highbrow and lowbrow and like art that has like philosophical meaning and message and then things that are more purely aesthetic or functional. And I think
Hmm.
puppetry is one of those things where it's like definitely not considered by like an art form by a lot of people, which sucks because
Yeah.
a huge amount of work goes into making a puppet or something like a prop for Star Wars. Um,
Hmm.
but it's sort of interesting that there is this weird divide between like respect for people who work with their hands as like a physical utilitarian thing versus like highbrow, philosophical art. It's a very different respect, and I feel like your work
Yeah.
switches that because you have these like finely made beautiful physical objects that are like purely artistic.
Hmm.
Like you said, they're not functional, there's something to like bring you joy. um but you're doing it from like a crafts perspective, and I'm wondering if you sort of have maybe thoughts on what it means to be a crafts person and also an artist, and like kind of bridge that divide culturally.
Well, I think just in general, like the world is getting better at like not having those boundaries, or
Yeah,
those like divides where like I think there's people working in the industry where they're like, I'm working for Disney, but I'm also doing this other, like I'm now making my own sculptures and doing
yeah.
this other thing. And it's like I think people are now like accepting that, like, yeah, you can kind of be everything. You don't
Mm.
have to be put in a box, you don't have to just be one thing. You can do a bunch of stuff. And that's actually what the Wayne White documentary is about too, where he's like he started on Pee-wee's Playhouse and he kind of started with TV, and now he's like doing like fine art paintings. So
Yeah.
like and he was like, and at first people were like not taking him seriously because they're like, no, you're that guy that makes like puppets. And then eventually I think the world like starts realizing that like no, you can kind of do it all, you
Yeah.
know? And also like I don't like a lot of people say I'm a woodworker. I still don't feel comfortable calling myself a woodworker. Like I wouldn't be able to make a chair, I wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to make furniture or anything like that. I prefer calling myself an artist that works with wood,
Yeah.
because I just like I feel like I'm insulting woodworkers that are like, you don't know what you're doing, Like I think sometimes people think I'm like better with wood than I actually am, but half of the time I'm like just just having fun and just like fucking around until something looks good or until something works, because there's been several pieces that I'm like, I'm trying something and then like, oh, that broke. That's not gonna work. So like, yeah, I'm still figuring all that out. So I don't fully like calling myself a woodworker yet, maybe down the line. But yeah, I prefer calling myself like an artist that works with wood.
Do
Mhm.
you carve by hand or do you use a saw, or like what's
I
your
use a
process?
little scroll saw that I have in my backyard,
That's
and I
so
just
cool.
cut that out, and then a lot of sanding, a lot of gesso, and then I paint it.
Got it. Okay, that
Hmm.
makes a lot of sense. I've talked to a few people on this podcast project, like
Hmm.
my friend who's a silversmith and one of my other friends who makes jewelry, and their sort of philosophy on making a physical object is like they put a lot of love and care into each thing, and we've talked a lot about like right now it seems like we're in an era of overconsumption where obviously me overconsumption all this shit in my house, but
I
like
mean, me too.
but like do you think do you have this feeling that the things you make are like special and like you're sort of even though you're selling things, you're trying to sort of combat like, I don't know, people like not fast fashion, obviously, but people like
Hmm.
over consuming. Do you sort of have that relationship with your work where like you feel that the work you're making is precious?
Yeah, like I have an appreciation for anything handmade. Like I also have a bunch of like, toys that were manufactured. Like I'm not like if I like it, I'm gonna buy it. But for
Yeah.
the most part, I try to support um people that are also making handmade stuff. Like any homie that like makes a figure or makes something that I'm like probably gonna get it. Um, but yeah, like even when I'm like at an antique store or something, I always gravitate towards like the wooden
Mhm.
thing or the thing that looks more handmade or like I don't know. It's just, and sometimes it's not even because I'm like, I need to support the handmade thing. I just think for me, there's something in me that always gravitates towards that like folky look, and that like handmade thing. Like I like even with toys, even if they're like made by like mass produced, I like a toy that looks shitty. I like a toy that like isn't painted properly. I like because nowadays you could get like a figure that's like so detailed and so good and like you can see every little stitch on their pants and like for me I don't gravitate towards like those figures. I like a crappy toy that was like yeah, like clearly someone like quickly slapped on some paint and
Yeah.
it kind of looks like shit and I really like that like handmade feeling to anything, even if it's mass produced. Like yeah, I like the touch of someone's hand. And even now, like I don't really buy digital prints anymore,
Mhm.
like I used to, but I have so much stuff in my house that like I need to buy. Um, if I'm gonna buy a print, it's got to be like some sort of printmaking or an original painting. Otherwise, I probably won't get it unless it has like a really cool message, which we go back to the message.
Right.
That's important too. But for the most part, I stick to like printed printed stuff.
When you are doing the exposures for your screen prints, do you draw on pen and paper still, or are you digital or like some mixture?
I I draw for the most part. They all start like in a sketchbook or like on
Mhm.
paper, and then I do clean them up on my iPad,
Mhm.
and then from there I go and I get them printed. The
The acetate.
what are they called? Yeah,
Acetate.
yeah. I get those printed at Screen Depot downtown.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. What's up? My dog.
Oh, a friend. Yeah, that's really cool. The reason I ask is because like I have uh I was trained both physically and digitally, so I have different respects for different things. But when I worked at the letterpress shop that I worked at last summer, um
Hmm.
my boss was like, we, we're not Luddites here. We don't like hate technology for the sake of hating it. We use it as a tool, and then we
Hmm.
allow that allows us to like continue using these like old forms of technology and then keep them alive and to not fall behind. And I thought that was a sort of beautiful philosophy of like respecting an old art or like the handmade, but then not being afraid to like, use help from the
Hmm.
technological world that we live in. And I think that's a really sort of beautiful melding where like you're still making this product that's handmade, but like, you have help.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about some of the patterns that are on your figurines and sort of where your palette and sort of aesthetic sense comes from, because I know you reference like the 50s style, but I think you have
Hmm.
like other sort of influences that have you've brought in.
Yeah, there's definitely like Mexican folk art really inspires me. Like the colors I think come from like Mexican folk art. Or just even Scandinavian folk art. Like there's a
Mhm.
lot of like just folk art in general, like it's just anything that looks handmade and like often they use really vibrant colors. If you
Yeah.
look at like old school folk art, like so yeah, any kind of folk art has always like just caught my eye for some reason. And yeah, and also like with the characters I do, there's always like symbols that come through. Like there's never ideas, but symbols always seem to stick around in my work, and it's always like devils, suns, moons, like nature, flowers and stuff, fish, and yeah, like certain little symbols and characters that do come through often, but I don't really know where they come from. I think
Hmm.
they're just fun to draw. Yeah.
I think everyone has like subconscious things that they make over and over. Um,
Yeah.
I'm so curious, like, do you have a tarot deck that you would make or like a children's book
Oh, that'd
or
be
something?
fun.
Because
Oh,
like
I'd love to do a children's book.
you should do it. Because being an illustrator is like kind of insane. It's still sort of, even though more people draw than they used to,
Hmm.
like it feels like being an illustrator, going to illustration school is still very niche. Um,
Hmm.
and it would be very cool to see your style on like a tarot deck. I think I would be the first person in line to buy it.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, this is a question I ask everyone, or not, I should ask everyone, is like your style is so unique and like I feel like it's very hard for a lot of younger artists to kind of come into a style. Like,
Hmm.
do you think it just like took practice to get where you are? Because it feels like every piece that you post, I know it's yours. Like it's so like obvious even before I look at, whose name is on the post, I'm like, oh, that's Erick's, like clearly.
Hmm.
Do you sort of have advice for people to get more of a style? Like it's such a hard thing to
Um,
do.
yeah, that is a hard thing. I mean, the thing is like just don't focus on it.
Mm,
Just draw. Like just don't I think early on, I think like in college, that's like such a thing, right? Like I gotta find my style, I gotta find my style. But I don't know. Mine has changed over time for sure. And it's kind of like at times it's been like sort of emulating someone else and like kind of like like you start like you get really into someone and you're like, oh, like you kind of start like drawing like them a little
yeah.
bit. But it's just kind of just draw a lot. Just keep a sketchbook and just draw all the fucking time and try everything, like try different mediums. And because once I found gouache, I was like, this is my shit. I love gouache,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think just don't focus on it too much, just draw and you're gonna find your style. You probably already have somewhat of a style, you just gotta like refine it and just keep drawing. It's really like you just got to keep going at it until like you chip away and like start getting it right. And even then, like it's gonna continue changing. I'm sure like if I 5 years from now, if I look at my work, I'm sure it's gonna be different, or I might be drawing different things, and it's gonna change. We're human, we're always gonna change. So
Mm.
just keep going and keep drawing. Yeah.
That's really good advice. It's also the hardest advice. It's like you just have to keep doing it. It's like,
Yeah, that's like the one thing you don't want to hear, like it's like, no, what's the easy? There's like no easy way. Like just fucking do it.
are there any new mediums you've been interested in recently or think you might want to explore in the future other than making chairs?
That's the one thing I miss. I feel like I used to be so good at like going to the art store and be like, what's this? I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna try this. And I feel like I've kind of lost that and I kind of missed that where I used to be so much more playful. And I still am, but I've also like because I do everything myself, like I feel like I've been trying to cool it with like trying to do everything.
Yeah.
It's like because recently I got like a cyanotype and that was like the last thing that I did do that I was like, dude, this looks so cool. I'm gonna try it. And it was awesome and it was fun. But like I feel like I can't be doing everything because I it took forever to get a few prints,
Yeah.
and I was like, well, this just isn't like it's for fun. But for like my job, I can't be like just trying everything, like I got to stick to a thing and get good at it,
Yeah.
because I do tend to like get bored of what I'm doing and be like, well, no, I want to try that. But I'm like, but that's not really a smart like business decision.
Yeah.
That's more of a like a good like on your own time. But I do need to get better at like not being so hands-on. Like I am trying to like start maybe getting shirts printed by someone else,
Yeah.
you know, like just because I can't do everything myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the shitty thing about being an artist and like a professional
Hmm.
artist is like, I when I was younger, I used to do film photography and I loved like developing all the film on my own in the dark room in college. And then, like you said, like when I graduated, I lost access to a dark room.
Hmm.
And it's like the beauty, like what makes you want to be an artist is like you have a natural curiosity towards making things.
Yeah.
And as soon
Hmm.
as you're like, oh fuck, it's expensive to do all these things I'm curious about, and then like
Yep.
you get sucked into the real world where you're like, well, t-shirts are this profitable and posters are this profitable, and like, developing my own film, like I can't, sell it, or like I'm not in those
Hmm.
circles where like you can make money from that. And it's like sad to kind of get beaten down by reality.
A
But
little bit, yeah.
it seems like you found a good balance with it though. Like your work is still really playful. Like
Hmm.
I don't know. I certainly admire you a lot and your work and like the different things you've
Thank
been able to explore. And you're also super young, so I feel like you have your whole
you.
life to figure out kind of the different directions you want to go in.
Yeah. And the thing is like I feel like I because I do get so bored of like doing a thing, I am happy that I have like I'll screen print like right now I'm in my screen print mode, so like I've been screen printing a lot. But then eventually I'll be like, God, I'm getting tired of this. And then I can go to woodworking, you
Right.
know, or I can go to just start like painting or like it's nice having a few different things that I can do that I don't have to necessarily just be doing the one thing every day,
Yeah.
so I do like that I have that balance a bit because I get bored of stuff like really fast.
Well, it's super nice that like you have I feel like unlike a lot of artists, you who have a lot of different interests, like you have all these interests, but then you somehow make it work where all of your work feels cohesive.
Mm,
I feel like there's a lot of like artists who are like, I'm a photographer and a painter, but my work doesn't look similar, right? Like you've
hmm.
created this sort of micro universe of your work that feels really coherent and beautiful. And it's super inspiring. We only have a minute left, so I'm
Oh
wondering if you
crap.
have like any short piece of advice to a younger artist who's just starting out.
Oh crap.
Sorry.
I don't know. Just create. Just do your own thing. Like don't like it's good to pay attention to what's going on in the art world and what people are making and go get inspired by stuff. But don't get lost in it. Just
Mm.
do your thing and also I we didn't talk much about community, but find a community. Find people that are like-minded and are in the art world. I started going to a thing called Sketch Party, which is so important to me. Like that's
Oh,
become my like home. I have so many good friends there and like if you're in LA, come to Sketch Party. It's fun. It's just like a drink and draw. But yeah, find a community that like can nurture your art